Yeah, let me just make sure I'm recording. Okay. So this video is just going to be a fundamental analysis of AMD, not so much technical, where you just look at the charts and kind of, follow the pattern. This is going to be about the company and its products. And I'm only making this video so that I can look back at this video at the end of the first quarter of 2017 and see if I'm correct, or see how many of my predictions have fallen or been proven correct and whatever. I'm just trying to self-analyze here. So here are my thoughts. The AMD CPU, the Ryzen CPU that's coming out, in the gaming sector, it's performing 1 to 2 frames per second higher than an i7-6900, which is a professional grade, high-end $1,200 CPU. Now, on the professional side, what makes this CPU in particular appealing is the number of cores that it has. So you've got 16 threads, 8 true cores. AMD's Ryzen also has 16 threads, 8 true cores. The i7-6900 is not self-overclocking. You have to do that manually, so you have to have enthusiasts do that, someone who understands computers. Ryzen doesn't have that. It has an AI-controlled, which is first of its kind, predictive AI that allocates different parts of the hardware, trying to predict the natural behavior of the software. So that improves just on a software side. So the cores are important for a professional, and the cores are important for the gaming, because the gaming industry with the new Falcon engine and the DirectX 12, all that is going to be making more use of the available hardware. Now, clock for clock, Ryzen beat out the $1,200 CPU by 10%? Yeah, 10%, which is very significant considering you have a $400 or a rumored $350 to $400 CPU from AMD, which is beating a $1,200 CPU. Now, if you're looking at servers, power consumption is a huge issue, because the more power you take, the more heat it makes, and servers hate that. AMD's targeting a little bit on the server side, so they were very conscious about power consumption. On average, it is consuming on par with the $1,200 CPU, which is very massive given that the instructions per clock is higher than that of a $1,200 CPU. So already you have a lower price and higher performance right off the bat. So the only tests that have come out are clock for clock tests at 3.0 and 3.4 gigahertz. So that's going to be something to watch out for. The exponential trend, well, the power consumption is on an exponential trend. So that means that the more gigahertz that you add, the more exponential the heat output becomes, once you're reaching the threshold limit of that CPU. So maybe 3.4 is that limit-ish, but it is rumored that 4 gigahertz is like an overclock limit, or an overclock minimum for the Ryzen CPU, given that you have the stock cooler on it. So now let's talk about the partner of AMD, which is the manufacturing partner, Global Foundries. They just had an upgrade where their 14 nanometer process has been adjusted, and they're creating 60,000 wafers a month. I'll get into what a wafer is later, but so the defect rate has heavily been reduced. To a reported, let's say, I'm going to be conservative here, and the numbers that I have is 0.15 per square centimeter for the defect density. So on a die size of 200 millimeters, on a wafer that is 300 millimeters, which is the industry standard right now, you get a yield of 56.49%. So that means that on a wafer that size with a die size of 200 millimeters, you have 279 candidates, meaning potential CPUs. Now, based on that average yield is bringing that total down to 158. So this is really good because GlobalFoundries just came out with an article saying that their infrastructure upgrade has increased their capability to what they're claiming 0.08 defect rate. So I'm just going to play conservatively and say that's 0.15. So you got a 0.15 on each square centimeter, so you're getting a 208 that are salvageable off of the 279 candidates. Oh boy. So, numbers aside, this just means that the more salvageable dies that you get, the lower the cost of manufacturing becomes, because you don't have to produce as much because your yield is higher. This is really good because Intel isn't even up to that standard yet. So, after everything is said and done, let's say a $30,000 wafer per month, because I know that their capability is 60,000, but they still have to allocate some manufacturing for their Polaris GPU line. So I'm going to be conservative and say 30,000 wafers per month. And that comes out to 6.24 million chips for the Zen CPU. So if we look at the available market share, what they're targeting is for like less than half the price of the $1,200 Intel variant, you have 43%, which means that for the high-end users, someone that's willing to pay $1,000 or more, let's say, you're getting 43% of that market share. Now, on your mid-range, you got someone that's willing to pay around $300, maybe even less. So that's 35%. I forgot what the numbers were exactly, but they're around that range. So you've got a total market target of 78% with a very, very competitive price. Rumored competitive price. Now, obviously, I'm going to have to reevaluate and see if AMD changes their direction. But the thing that AMD has to consider is if their manufacturing yields very cheap CPUs, because the more that you manufacture, the more you're able to sell that CPU for, obviously a less price. In other words, it's just a way to increase your profit margins. So that's going to look really good on, let's say Q2 of, your quarterly reports or your earnings report. So outside of just that, they're going to have to beat out the name brand recognition, the mind share. So the mind share is basically, the best way I can describe this is, you have an Apple user that likes Apple and he doesn't know why, it's just popular and he likes it. Now you can have someone that says, wait, something else is better than that for the same price or less. He's not going to care. He has the mindshare for Apple. That's basically what Intel and Nvidia is right now. Comparatively, if you will. So that's the hurdle that they have to go over, but right now, so far so good. AMD, as of late, has been recuperating some of that mind share, especially with their Polaris line. So that is about it. So my prediction is the stock price may be overbought, just because the value of the Ryzen CPU hasn't yet been, released officially. But according to JPR, and that's a research firm basically. According to what their findings are, it's just, so far so good based on what I've researched. So I'm just gonna leave it at that, and I'm gonna set a reminder for 2 months from now so I can look back at this video and see how many of my predictions came up. Coolio. So that's about it.